You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Shemesh Israel 5779, 2018. This week's Parsha is Parshas Mikeitz, and the Torah continues to detail the events of Yosef HaTzadik's life, of Joseph, the righteous one, and how he finally, after many years sitting incarcerated, was released from jail, came out, and interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh and became the second in command, second only to Pharaoh, as the leader of Mitzrayim of Egypt, and as the one who would provide for their physical sustenance throughout the years of famine. And I'd like to focus in and share with you two different ideas, one of which comes from Rabbi Chaim Friedlander, and one of which comes from Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Per. And I'd like to tie them together and understand an amazing depth, which I think that we can, each and every one of us, incorporate into our own lives and understand how Hashgacha Pratis, how God's divine providence, how we can view it, how we can interact with it, and how we can use it in our lives. So Reb Chaim Friedlander says like this. He wants to understand something which is challenging in the story of Yosef. At the end of last week's Parsha, the Torah tells us that Yosef HaTzadik interprets the dreams of the baker of Pharaoh, as well as the dream of the wine, the cupbearer of Pharaoh, one of whom is going to be reinstated in his position, is going to be let out of jail, one of whom is going to be killed. And indeed, exactly as he interprets the dreams, that's exactly what happens. And the statement that Yosef makes to the cupbearer, to the wine man of Pharaoh is, I was unjustly placed here into jail. I was unjustly sold away from my family in the land of the Hebrews. Please redeem me from here. Tell Pharaoh to take me out. It's unfair that I'm here. And he repeats that message, and he says it again. And our sages tell us that there was something lacking in the bitachon of Yosef HaTzadik. Joseph was somebody who, as we'll see, had an awesome level of bitachon, of trust in God. And because of the fact that he was on such a high level in his trust in God, the fact that he did too much hishtadlus, he put in too much efforts, he asked too many times of the cupbearer of Pharaoh to remember him, it constituted a lack of bitachon on his part, a lack of trust, a lack of faith. And therefore, he was left to be in jail for an extra 2 years instead of being released immediately. Now, the challenge that we have to that issue, the problem in that explanation of the verses that Yosef did something wrong, is that we see, or maybe it's not such a great difficulty, but we see it to be a contrast to what Yosef does when he comes out of jail. And perhaps it's because he learned his lesson. But we see that when Yosef comes out of jail, Yosef takes a particular tack. And we'll also see that he changes his tactic. First thing that he does, he comes out of jail. And this is the beginning of our Parsha. Pharaoh has his dreams, the fat cows, the skinny cows, the fat wheat, the skinny wheat, etc. So all of a sudden, the Sarah Mashkim, the cupbearer, remembers his dream and what happened with Yosef. And he says to Pharaoh, because he sees Pharaoh is extremely disturbed, by his dreams. So he says there was a young man there in jail with us, and he was somebody who could interpret dreams. He was spot on. He was on the money. So Pharaoh takes him out. He says to him, Pharaoh says to Yosef, I have heard that you have the ability to interpret dreams. You can hear them, you can understand them. And Yosef says an amazing response. He says an amazing thing. Biladai, it's not me. God will be the one who's going to answer you. Hashem, as Rashi explains, Biladai ein chachma mishali, the wisdom is not mine. God will put into my mouth something that will answer and give peace, or bring peace to Pharaoh. So Yosef says something which is odd. We've already seen that Yosef is somebody who knows how to take advantage of the moment, and as we'll soon see, he does do that behemshech, in the continuation of the story. So Yosef, we would think that Yosef would respond in the affirmative. Yes, I'm intuitive. I have a gift. God gave me a gift. Maybe even say it's God, but God gave me a gift of being able to interpret dreams. And I'm happy to take a listen to your dream as well. That's not what he says. He says, it's not me. If anyone's going to answer you, it's going to be God. But it's not me. I can't take claim to my abilities. And that's the first thing that he says, which, it seems strange. Yosef is somebody who it would seem should be able to take credit and say, and in fact, the continuation of the verses, as the verses continue, we see that he interprets the dream. Pharaoh likes the interpretation of the dream. Yosef continues. He senses this is the moment. This is the moment to step up. And he says to Pharaoh, he says, if it's good in Pharaoh's eyes, what he should do is Pharaoh should appoint somebody who's wise, somebody who can take care of all of the financial things that are going on, all of the crops that are coming in, set aside the crops, build it up for 7 years, and be able to give it out in the 7 years that follow a famine. So Yosef basically sets him up, and he's thinking in his head, as the Meforshim explain, I'm your man, right? I'm your guy. He was saying that because he wanted to be chosen. He saw an opportunity. So what's the idea here? Why is Yosef seem to be wavering between saying that it's all God, as opposed to taking the opportunity to speak up, to do something, to put himself out and to offer his services in a certain sense to Pharaoh? What's the understanding of this? So this is the basic question that Reb Chaim Friedlander poses, and I'd like to read his answer before we get to another point from Rosh Hashiva and wrap them both together in an amazing understanding, I think, of the depth of what's going on in the story of Yosef. He says like this. He says that Yosef, with his statement of Biladai, it's not me, God is going to answer you. Yosef was doing something fundamental, because Yosef is the ultimate. When it comes to the midah of bitachon, when it comes to the character trait of trusting God, Yosef is the one who has that in a great measure. So he says like this, Rahim bazeh yisoi b'malas bitachon. We see an amazing foundational idea when it comes to the concept of trusting God. Shaloi rak zeh shenimtza b'tzara, v'lo yodea me'ayin tavo ha'yeshua. Not just somebody who is in trouble and doesn't know where his salvation is going to come from. Hu tzarich livtech b'Hashem she'ezrenu. We think about it. When does a person trust in God? When does a person turn to God? Often it's when a person is in trouble. When a person is, like they say, there are no atheists in a foxhole. When a person is in a difficult situation, so then he turns to God and he says, God, I trust in you. Please help me. God, please give me what I need. Bring me salvation. Says Reb Chaim Friedlander, it's not enough to show that one trusts in God in the situation which is challenging. A person who sees that he's about to be saved, a person who sees that the salvation is here, I am being saved. He also needs to trust Hashem. Yosef, in his statement, Biladai, it's not me, God is going to answer you. He was making a clear statement to himself and to Pharaoh that God is the one who's going to be. God is the one who I trust, and God is the one who is saving me, and God is the one who's going to save me. And interestingly, as he points out, Pharaoh responds and says that you're the man of God. God has revealed this to you. When Yosef speaks this way and refers to the fact that it's God who's done it, Pharaoh himself recognizes that it's God who's done it. The Kach Gra. Says Reb Chaim Friedlander, he quotes the Gra. It's a pasuk, the verse that says, "V'ani b'chazdecha b'tachti." The verse refers to King David. King David speaks about the kindness of God, that he trusts in God's kindness. He has bitachon, he has faith. Yageli b'bishuasecha. There are three statements here. One is, I have faith, I trust it before the fact. Yageli b'bishuasecha, my heart will rejoice when you are saving me in your salvation. Ashir l'Hashem ki gomal alai, and even after the fact, I will sing to God for what He has done for me. Shleimus Bitachon, says the Gra, what is the perfection, what is the highest state of trusting God? Who kasher yimtza b'shal yizman ha'meila, when we're 3 different times. Kasher be'es tzarai lav yisanashay, when a person is in difficulties, so he needs to turn to God. Number 2, kasher hu yavoy lo hayushua levakesh yishua mibnei adam rak me'es Hashem. When the salvation is coming, when it's here, he shouldn't turn to people, but rather he should recognize, even within the salvation, even though maybe it's coming through people, it's God who's doing it. It's Hashem who's doing it. Number 3, after the fact, when Hashem has already saved him, he shouldn't forget. He has to return to God. He has to give back to God, so to speak, and not remember that it was the fact that he trusted him with the whole heart. That's why he's saying, when it was in the time of my difficulty, I trusted in Hashem and nobody else. Even when I'm being saved, I recognize that it's you that's saving me. I'm not asking of anyone else to help me. I will sing to God when He helps me out, when He gives me power. I will sing to God, for He has helped me out. Okay? So we see that Yosef HaTzadik, when it comes to his interaction with Pharaoh, we see that he's inside. He sees, he senses, he knows that this is his moment. This is his moment of salvation. The moment is coming. The moment is here. And he says, but I'm not going to make a mistake about who is saving me. I'm not going to make a mistake that it's God who is doing this for me. Okay? That's what's going on here. But we still have to understand what happened in the previous situation 2 years before, when he spoke to the cupbearer of Pharaoh, to the Sar Mashkim, who indeed was going to, in the future, 2 years later, going to be the one to mention his name to Pharaoh. What happened there? What was the mistake that he made? Okay, so that's basically what Reb Chaim Friedlander says. Reb Chaim Friedlander points out and explains, and this is the last point I want to bring out of Reb Chaim Friedlander, is that he explains that Yosef, I'll read this inside because it's very, very interesting, and the way that he phrases it is very important. Since Yosef was someone who had really perfected his trust in God, there was something missing in his trust when it came to the story where he was still in jail and asking the Sar Mashkim to help him get out of there. He asked for the Sar Mashkim to speak on his behalf. And therefore it was decreed upon him that we would stay another 2 years in jail. Praise is the one who places God as his trust. Zeh Yosef. Chazal say it's a medrash in Bereshis Rabbah. This is Joseph. They were emphasizing the high level that Joseph had. All of his trust was in God. But there was a mistake that he did. He shouldn't have turned to Rahavim. What are Rahavim? See, he said it twice. Remember me, don't forget me. He had an extra 2 years in jail. Joseph should not have turned to Rahavim. Rahavim, the word Rahavim means those who are full of ego, those who are self-driven, those who think that it's not God, right? He shouldn't have turned to them to ask for his salvation. He shouldn't have turned to the Sar Mashkim. He made a mistake in his evaluation of the situation. As we will explain, because he was on such a high level, he was punished. He had to cleanse himself in a certain sense, and was in jail for another 2 years. Okay, it proves that the idea of Rahavim is a reference to Balei Gaiva, to those who are egotistical, which is the Sar Mashkim. Visa Masber Chazon Ish, says Reb Chaim Friedlander, that the Chazon Ish, based on this, explains What was missing for Yosef when he turned to the Sar Mashkim? The Chazon Ish writes that since people, yes, there is an obligation for a person to take action, not to depend on a nace, on a miracle. Yosef therefore had an obligation not to depend on a miracle and to therefore make some effort. Now here's where he says the main point of what I want to bring out of Reb Chaim Friedlander. Yosef had an incredible level of bitachon, of trust in God, but he also had an incredible level of intuition, understanding the messages that God was sending him. Hashem placed the wine bearer, the cupbearer of Pharaoh, and the baker of Pharaoh there into the jail with him, and gave him these dreams. And Hashem placed in his heart the correct interpretation of the dreams. So he saw this as a sign from heaven that his salvation was meant to come from them. Furthermore, we find that our sages say that the actual details of the dream of the Sar Mashkim, of the cupbearer of Pharaoh, hinted to certain aspects of the future redemption of the Jewish people. Okay? Chazal, as our sages say, why did our sages establish 4 cups of wine, on the night of Passover? Where did they get it from, or what was one of the places where they saw it, the hint to it? It says 4 times the word kos, the four times in the dream of the Sar Mashkim, it says the word cup. The kos Pharaoh biyadi says the cup of Pharaoh is in my hand, etc. We find that the grapes that were in the dream were also a hint. They indicated something about the redemption from Egypt. Our sages say there was a grapevine in front of me. This is a reference to the people of Israel. But Geffen Shleisha Srigim, on the grape there were 3 clusters. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. This is a reference to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, the 3 people who were the redeemers of the people of Israel. It was expanding. It was budding and blossoming. Referencing the redemption of the people of Israel. So now the dream itself represented redemption of the Jewish people. He understood the dream to not just be something that was for the Sar Mashkim, that he was going to be let out of jail, but he saw that it was a reference to the redemption of the Jewish people, and therefore also a reference to his own personal redemption. And Yosef saw the necessity to put in some kind of effort and to ask the Sar Mashkim to let him out, to help him out. Says Reb Chaim Friedlander an amazing aside. First of all, we see that Yosef was able to read the signs. He was able to see the message that God was saying specifically to him. That's number 1. Number 2 is he saw the necessity. It was correct that he should take some kind of action. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to take an action, not depend on a miracle. However, it needed to be something which was an action which made sense. There's something missing when he was trying too hard. When he tries and he puts in an extra effort, he should have taken an action, but not too much of an action. Because by overemphasizing, by asking him a second time, please remember me, get me out of here. So he was overemphasizing his request to the Sar Mashkim, to the cupbearer, instead of depending on God, retaining his dependence on God, which he did do when he got out of the jail, when he spoke to Pharaoh. Okay, so it's such a fine thing, especially for somebody on a high level like Yosef. It's a very fine balance. And in that moment, in the moment with the Sar Mashkim, he was supposed to do something, but he did too much. He dropped, he passed over the line. He dropped the ball, so to speak. As he explains. Okay, so that's the crux of what I want to get out of Reb Chaim Friedlander and the Chazon Ish. But what we see from Yosef, what we see from this, is that Yosef had an amazing ability to recognize to see the signs, to recognize that Hashem was helping him and guiding him and bringing him towards his personal salvation, which would also ultimately really be a salvation for the Jewish people as well, because he was to be their leader. He was to be the Machalka, the one who was going to sustain them and guide them in their service of God. Now I want to share with you one more point, which we find later in the Parsha, from the way that Yosef reads the signs. He reads the signs. He sees things that are the opposite of the way that they should be. And because they're the opposite of the way they should be, they're outstandingly unusual, Yosef understands that he's supposed to use his koiches. He's supposed to use the situation in a certain way. He's supposed to approach the situation in a certain way. And that is later in the Parsha, and this is from my Rosh Hashiva Rabbi Per. There's a challenge, a difficulty in the story of Yosef. Yosef, he sees his brothers. The Torah tells us that they came in there, and he recognizes them, but they did not recognize him. And Yosef remembers the dreams, and he speaks tough to them. He puts them through a very difficult situation. They don't realize it's him. These things are happening. The difficulties, the challenges, he talks tough to them. He accuses them of being spies. He incarcerates them. He lets them out. He says, don't come back without your brother Benjamin. They come back. He puts the money in their bags. He accuses them. He accuses Benjamin of having stolen his magic goblet, etc. Why does he do that? Why does Yosef put them through this terrible challenge? Why is he so mean to them? We find elsewhere in Chazal that other people did such things. Penina with Chana. Chana was unable to bear children. Penina was mean to her so that she should pray. But the Torah tells us, Chazal, our sages say that was wrong. It was a terrible sin that Penina committed. But in the story of Yosef, we don't find that they say that. We find that Yosef put them through this difficulty, put them through this challenge. It seems that he did the right thing. He put them through it, as Rosh Hashiva explains, because he needed them to be redeemed. They shouldn't be thrown out of the Jewish people. Very interesting, he says, Binyamin had 10 children, Yosef had 2 children. That would have been the 12 tribes. Really, like Esav was thrown out, and Yishmael was thrown out of the Jewish people because they sinned and they did wrong. Yosef was coming to redeem his brothers. They had to stand up for a daughter of Rachel in order that they come back, that the Jewish people remain the 12 tribes, not from Rachel and from Rachel, but rather from Leah as well. Yosef was doing an awesome thing. He was redeeming them. But how did he know to do that? Where did he see that this was his job? Number one, for sure, and this is not something Rosh Hashiva mentions, but clearly he knew that he was the leader. He was to be the one who would guide them. That was his dreams. Their bowing down to him meant that he was to be their leader and to guide them. One dream was that he was going to give them food, and that was the sheaves of wheat bowing down to him. That represented the food. But the other dream was the stars and the sun and the moon, which represent the spiritual power that God brings into the world through the sun, the star, and the moon, the stars and the moon. So he saw that he was obligated to guide them, and they were to bow to him in spiritual matters as well. How did he know to do this? So Rosh Hashiva explains that when they walked in and they didn't recognize him, an amazing thing, Yosef saw an amazing sign. Because he looked exactly, as our Chazal tell us, he looked identical to his father. He looked exactly like Yaakov Avinu. He looked like Jacob. He looked like them. He was their brother. He looked like Benjamin. They were standing there and they didn't recognize him. It was illogical that he shouldn't recognize him. And he did all of these things indicating that he knew who they were. And they still didn't recognize him. They still didn't put the pieces together. They didn't get it. They didn't chap. And Yosef recognized the fact that they didn't get it. They didn't recognize him. He himself was able to discern that this was a message from Hashem. This was a sign from Hashem this is what you are to do, Yosef. Your job is to redeem them. They don't take this opportunity from the fact that they don't recognize you. Now you can do something because they don't recognize you that will bring them back in, that they shouldn't be rejected like Esav and Yishmael were rejected. Amazing thing. Yosef had this amazing ability, an intuitive ability to understand and see from the things that are going on that are kineged hateva, against nature, that they shouldn't be. The Sarah Mashkim and the Seraphim shouldn't have come there. Pharaoh shouldn't have really taken him out. He shouldn't have been able to interpret those dreams. He shouldn't have been able to stand up. But he was able to recognize what was going on, what the signs were from God, and to take the proper action based on it. Of course, to reinforce within himself the trust of God. To reinforce within himself that it's God who's doing it. Sometimes he would lose the balance. But for the most part, Yosef was able to maintain the balance, to recognize the signs from Hashem, and to take the correct action, reaffirming that God is the one who's doing everything for him. So that's the bottom line. And I want to take out of here, and I want to bless you and ask you to bless me. Hashem should help each and every one of us to see the signs in our lives, to see that Hashem is placing things in our lives. Sometimes we hit up against a brick wall. We're trying to accomplish something. We're trying to do something, and it seems like it's just not working. It's not going. And sometimes it's got to take time. And sometimes it's just simply because we need to develop our trust in God. Hashem should help us to be able to recognize the signs. Hashem should help us to be able to reaffirm our trust in God and our recognition that it's Hashem who does everything for us. And ultimately, our success at every level, financially, spiritually, in every tchum, in every area of our lives, is dependent on Him. Hashem should help us to recognize that, and to also be able to take the correct actions and find the right balance between our faith and our trust in God and the delicate actions we need to take as we side by side hold God's hand and recognize that it's all from Him. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a Freilich and Chanukah, a happy Chanukah. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.